This is not a surprise. You guys all knew this video was going to be coming. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that has been showing up a little bit more frequently on my channel, and that is audiobooks. So today I'm going to be talking about the audiobook programs, or the digital programs that I use to get digital media, audiobooks, ebooks, and whatnot, how I kind of got into audiobooks, and what I like about audiobooks. Now, audiobooks is not a new concept to me. I've tried them in the past before, and I liked just sitting and crocheting or coloring or doing something while the book is being read to me. I wasn't a huge fan of using them, which is why I didn't use them quite a bit, and that was either because of a hit or miss with the narrator, or sometimes I'd end up getting an abridged version when I want an unabridged version of a book, because I like the full book. Now, I don't know when exactly it was that I jumped back onto the audiobook bandwagon. I think it was when I started reading The Books of Bayern by Shannon Hale and borrowed The Goose Girl from Hoopla, and that's kind of where I think it kind of took off for audiobooks for me again, especially when I realized how much more reading I could get in the month and how much faster it was to get through books with audiobooks, but also how much more I retained of having something read to me and being able to do something else with my hands. Something I noticed about myself, especially when I was in Bible college, is especially in the lecture classes where there wasn't like a PowerPoint presentation where I could be taking notes, unless I had something monotonous to do with my hands or kind of focus on, I couldn't really pay attention. And I started using like old Windows Paint program, and I'd zoom in all the way I could and use the grid and just do mindless squares and patterns. And that's how I paid attention in class. The same has kind of happened for me for audiobooks. If I'm sitting there listening to the audiobook, I like to either be crocheting or coloring, or I have a color by number or pixel coloring on my phone that I just kind of monotonously color in little squares and pixels, and that's how I pay attention to audiobooks, and I find I retain a lot more that way than if I'm just straight up reading the book. I also like that I am getting more reading in. Not that I'm a huge believer on quantity, I am more so a quality person, but I do like the fact that I can get through more books in a month than I did with just physically reading, because apparently I'm a slow reader, which I never thought myself as one. A new discovery for me for audiobooks is being able to use it for non-fiction books. I really do like reading Christian living books or Christian non-fiction books, but because they do take me longer to read them because I want to absorb more from them, I don't read them because I'm putting them off to read other books I really want to read at that moment. But I found a couple of programs that let me now listen to the audiobook versions of them, and a lot of these are narrated by the authors of the books, and a lot of these guys are pastors, so it's like listening to a really good sermon or someone who's just really good at expressing themselves reading their own books. So that's a brief of how I kind of got into audiobooks again and what I really like to use audiobooks for. Now let's jump into the programs I use for audiobooks. I've mentioned before on my channel, I really try to be budget friendly. I try to spend as little as I can or find the best deals for books. The same goes for audiobooks. So I'm going to go with the more expensive one to an inexpensive one to two free programs that I use. The first one is the expensive one, and the expensive one is Audible. Audible for me in Canada is about $14.95 a month, I believe. And with that, you have a discount on audiobooks, so members get a member discount. And I think it's about 30% off of audiobooks, which, to be honest, isn't a whole lot because audiobooks can range anywhere from $80 for some collections to $25. And very rarely do I see anything that's under $15. With your Audible account, you get a 30-day free trial, you get a credit to get a free audiobook, and then every month you get a credit to get a free audiobook. Technically, though, with the subscription fee, you're still paying $14.95 a month, essentially for an audiobook. So you're paying $14.95 for one audiobook a month is really what it kind of works out to. With these audiobooks, you don't just get to stream and listen to whatever you want. You have to purchase these books. The plus side of that is that you own these books. So if you cancel your subscription to Audible, you get to keep the books that you purchased through Audible. So that's one of the plus sides, is that you get to keep these books and listen to them whenever you want. For me, the negative aspect of it is waiting and having patience, and that's where I was running into problems. However, when I'm binge reading a series or when I'm going through a series and I go through them rather quickly now with audiobooks, it became a little bit more difficult to patiently wait for the next credit of the month. So I did find myself spending money on Audible, which is what I was trying to avoid doing, because I'm still spending $25 for a book that I already physically own, that I already spent about $25 on. So I'm buying the book twice. So it was really adding up toward the end. Now they do have daily deals. They did have Black Friday and Boxing Day deals, so you can get audiobooks cheap that way as well. But still, to add extra money for books you already physically own, it was just adding up to a little bit too much money for me. The positives I found with Audible was some of the programs they had for Audible exclusives, and the productions that the Audible company did are very well done. There's a few celebrity narrated audiobooks that they have that are incredibly done. And any of the classics, I find Audible has done fantastic work with classics, with Elizabeth Gaskell's books, with Jane Austen's books, and I haven't really found an equivalent of, or even something to rival the quality of audiobooks that Audible has done with some of its classics. With Audible, you can use a desktop program. There's like a free desktop app you can download. There's also an app on your phone you can download, of course, and both of them are really easy and fun to use, and it's just a really easy app to navigate. The other thing I really liked about Audible, and I'm kind of a sucker for, is the stats. I liked seeing how much time I've spent reading. You get badges for certain achievements. You get to level up of certain reading amount time, so I think I'm a novice audiobook listener, and then you get the level up the more hours you spent reading, and I'm kind of a sucker for that. So I really enjoyed that aspect of Audible, and you guys know I love watching progress bars and leveling up and stuff, which is why I like stuff like Pokemon Go and Goodreads, and just, I don't know what those things have to do with each other, but, you know, collecting badges and watching progress of things is why I liked certain apps that way, and that's what I really liked about Audible. So those are my pros and cons to Audible. The next one I want to talk about is Scribed. Scribed is a new to me app. I am just checking this one out, so I don't have all of the information and details, but I'm just going to talk about what I do know or what I have found out about this program. Scribed was recommended to me by my friend Felicia from the Little Prairie Library. She said, hey, if you really like audiobooks, you should check out this program. And I did. So I'm doing a 30-day free trial at the moment. So most of these programs do have a 30-day free trial that you get to check them out. And so far, I think I might keep this one. What I liked about Scribed is, of course, the price. It's only $8.99 a month. It is a streaming service, so you don't get to buy or keep any of these physical copies of books. So it's like Netflix, but for digital media. So you get access to ebooks, audiobooks, news, documents, and sheet music, which was a new concept for me. So you get access to all of these on Scribed. For the library of what's available on Scribed, they're doing pretty good. I was overwhelmed and very impressed with the books and what was available on Scribed to stream. Excluding my Audible exclusives and the classics that I found on Audible, most of what I had on my Audible wishlist was available on Scribed. So that was pretty cool, and I'm kind of overwhelmed about all of the books I now have saved on my Scribed wish list, or saves list. What I also really liked about Scribed is the accessibility to Christian living books. John MacArthur, Kyle Idleman, Francis Chan, all of these books are available on Scribed, which was amazing. And so I have access to all of these books that I have been putting off, now available on audiobook. To be fair though, I didn't really search them up on Audible, but then I would have had to be paying for these books, plus buying the physical books as well, so I didn't really look into these ones because I wasn't looking into buying them. As far as navigating the app, they have pretty much the same features as Audible. Most of the player interfaces of these apps pretty much work the same, so I'm not going to go too much into them. Now, of course, not everything is available on Scribed because it is a streaming service, so there are a few gaps of a few things that I wanted to read that aren't available on Scribed. But with the other two apps I'm going to talk about, I can pretty much get all of the books I want to read between the 3, if not 4 of them with Audible. The next 2 programs, as far as I'm aware, are free with a library card. At least these are the programs that my library uses for their digital media. And that is Overdrive and Hoopla. I'm going to be talking about Hoopla first because it's my least favorite of the 2. I do really like Hoopla. You have access to not just audiobooks and ebooks, but you have access to TV shows, miniseries, movies, and music and CDs. So you have access to a bit more different digital media than you would with Scribed or Overdrive. There's some really obscure stuff on Hoopla, which I was pretty happy to see. Some obscure Disney or really weird miniseries or stuff I watched as a kid that I was kind of happy to see. So they have a pretty interesting library and collection of media on there. They do have a decent collection of audiobooks. They have a decent collection of YA. I haven't really expanded searching into too much other things aside from just YA. But they do have a pretty decent library as far as I can tell. Now with Hoopla, it is like borrowing from the library, so you have 21 days to use this media that you select or borrow, and then it kind of goes back and you're done and you can't stream it anymore. The other thing with Hoopla is you get 2 credits or 2 titles that you can borrow a month, and that is it. And that is what I don't like about Hoopla. They used to have 5. You used to be able to borrow 5 titles a month of something, and that worked pretty good. But now they learned it down to 2 titles a month. Also, something I forgot to mention for Scribed as well is you don't get to sample what the narrator sounds like. So for Audible, you get to play a little sample and see what you think about the audiobook. For Scribed and Hoopla, you don't get to sample them. I kind of did like a cheaty bypass way of like finding the book on Hoopla or Scribed and then sampling it on Audible. Now with Scribed, it's not so much of a big deal because you don't have only 2 titles a month. If you start listening to it and you don't like it, you can just move on to the next book and not worry about having a limited amount of titles. With Hoopla though, that's where I ran into the problem is if I don't like it and I return it, I've lost that title for that month and I only have 1 more title to borrow that month. So if I found the title that I wanted to get on Hoopla on Audible, I would sample it there or on Overdrive, which is another place you can sample them. The other program I use is Overdrive. Overdrive is connected directly to my library's library collection. So what my library has or has purchased, that is what is on Overdrive. If they have 1 or 2 digital copies of that, there is only access to 1 or 2 digital copies. So if someone has borrowed Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and 2 of those copies are being borrowed at the moment, I have to be put on a wait list, just like you would do with the library. Like with most libraries, you do have a limit of what you can borrow, but my library sits at about 21 titles a month for physically from the library as for on Overdrive, so that's pretty decent because I don't think I've ever read 21 titles a month. Also, if you decide you don't like it and you return it, you don't lose that title that you can borrow a month either. It just kind of, you returned it, you still have that title you can borrow again. With Overdrive, you do have a sample option, so you can sample the audiobook before you listen to it and decide if you like the narrator. The player is pretty easy to use as well, and a lot of what I want is available on Overdrive. Again, if I don't find what I want, I can kind of look on Scribed and Hoopla. Another feature I like about Overdrive is when you search up specific titles, your library may not own it, but it is available on Overdrive, so they will show you what is available. So if Overdrive has it, you can recommend it to your library to purchase. And again, that's up to your library to purchase. So just because you recommend that, hey, you should buy this Juliet Marillier book, doesn't mean that they're going to actually purchase that book, so you might not get it. However, I have had one instance where they did, and they instantly put me on hold or on the wait list for it while they got it ready, and I was able to get it. So it does work out in some cases. And just like Hoopla, this one is free with a library card. So if you have to pay $10 for a library card, I'd rather pay $10 for a library card because with $10, I have access to a whole world of media. Out of the 4 of these programs, I do prefer Scribed right now the most, as well as Audible, although for price-wise, Audible is starting to get a little for me, and I might just wait out to get credits a month, purchase the Jane Austen books that I want to get off of Audible, and then possibly cancel my subscription service at the moment because it is starting to add up, unfortunately. But at least when I cancel that subscription service, I get to keep all of my lovely classics. All else fails, if you don't like any of these programs, you can go ahead and borrow the CDs from your library. They do have audiobooks on CD. It's a little old school, but it still works. So you can borrow the physical CD from your library, or you can purchase them, but they're pretty expensive. Like, mind-blowingly expensive at how pricey an audiobook is in store. So I would recommend borrowing that from your library instead. So in the future, I do have an audiobook recommendations video coming up, so you guys can stay tuned for that, where I will actually go through actual audiobooks for you guys as recommendations of what is really good and what I found I really enjoyed, if you guys are at all interested. So I will be doing that in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it educational, informational. I hope you found good information from this video, and I hope I was concise and clear and was able to get across what I like about these programs. So that is it for me today, guys. Stay tuned for some audiobook recommendations. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!